Well, hail and welcome again, everyone, to another episode of Midgard Musings. If this is your first time watching, thank you for tuning in and checking out my channel. My name is Jesse, and every week on Sundays, I host a discussion, usually a live discussion on Facebook. This week, we're not going to have the live discussion because I have some things going on later on, or from the time of this video, later on in the day, but by the time you see this video, it should have already been done, some things that I had planned. So we're going to skip the live video discussion on Facebook, but usually every Sunday night at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, you can jump on the Facebook page, the Midgard Musings Facebook page, and join in a live discussion of whatever topic we may be talking about at the moment. Today's topic is going to be sort of a little bit of a follow-up video from last week's episode, which I'll link up in a card somewhere up here in this video. And talking where we talked about Valhalla. So this week is going to be kind of a continuation of that theme. We're going to be speaking about the afterlife a bit and some of the ideas that we have as far as sources and things that we know about how the Norse people looked at what happened after you die. So before we go and do that, I'm going to just go light this candle and light some incense, and then we'll get right into this discussion. So while I'm doing this, if you folks haven't already, become a subscriber to the YouTube channel. Would really appreciate that if you did so. And then also, when you do become a subscriber, click on the bell notification to be notified every time I upload a new video, which, like I said, is usually on Sundays, usually Sunday night, and then at the same time, quite often, is a live discussion on the Facebook page. So make sure you're following and subscribing to all of the social media things that I have going on, which as of right now is just the Facebook page. Link for that's down in the description. And become a subscriber to this channel. So thank you all for your support. Let's get right into this discussion today. Where do the dead go? And how the Norse typically viewed the afterlife. So in a lot of some of the myths, and some of the sagas, you're going to hear about Valhalla a lot. You're going to hear about Hell a lot, okay, or Helheim, the place where Loki's daughter Hel resides. And those are some of the bigger, more widely understood or known realms or places for the dead to go. Now, last week, like I said, we talked about Valhalla and the purpose for that place and what it's set aside for. I'm not going to really go into too much about Valhalla today. You can check out the video from last week to get some details about all that. But one of the things that came up in the video last week was how for Valhalla, that's going to be Odin's warriors that help him fight in Ragnarok, but that those warriors are the second pick. The first pick of the slain on the battlefield are chosen by the Valkyries, and they go to what we've come to here as Thors Hall, Folkvogner. All right, so Folkvogner is a place that we really don't have a lot of descriptive elements for. It's known as the field of the, Folkvogner could be translated or known as field of the people, or field of the field of armies, field of the folk. All right, plain of the folk, whatever. There in all of the lore, it's really just mentioned. It's not spoken of in too great detail. I think maybe Snorri Sturluson in his Prose Edda may go into some detail about it, but we really don't have a whole lot of as far as like what it looks like, right? But we really don't have any sources that can tell us what it's for. We can speculate, being that Freya is looked upon from many different aspects as far as her role as a god or goddess, that of love, that of war, so many different things that she's sort of associated with. It could be, speculated that the fallen slain that are first chosen, that go to Thors Hall, also have a part in Ragnarok, but we don't really have anything that can back that up in terms of historical text or anything from the myths. So you have Valhalla, you have Folkvogner. These are two halls that are presided over by Odin and Freya, respectively, and they are pretty much set aside for the fallen on the field of battle, the slain. We also have some talk of another hall that is presided by Ran, the giantess, wife of the god Aegir, or Aegir, how you pronounce, depending on which region you're linguistically, pulling from. And this is the realm of the sea. This is something that we hear about being talked about, where those who die at sea are taken to Ran's hall. Seems to be a pretty, I guess, maybe a place of rest, but a pretty hospitable, enjoyable place. Aegir's hall, and his hospitality is spoken of in the myths when the gods went to have this grand gathering in Aegir's hall in the poem Lokasana. He seems to be a very generous host, and so this hall, Ran's hall, in the sea or in the ocean, under the sea, is a place that we've heard about in some of the myths, that some of the texts that support those who die at sea. And since a lot of the Norsemen spent a good bit of their time, traveling over the sea and over the waters, it makes sense that this would be something that existed in somewhere in history for them to think about where they would go if they ended up dying on the water. There are other. There's also another hall that Thor presides over, and that is Thrudvagnar, or the Power Hall, if you will. Thor is one of the chief figures that we see worshipped or given respect to and given praise to during the arch-heathen times and going into the Viking Age, because he's the everyman's god. He's the common folks' god. He's the protector of Midgard. He's the one who just the everyday, normal person, whether they be a farmer or a blacksmith or the common folk, could feel closest to and feel drawn to. So it's supported in some of the texts that we have that Thor has his hall. Believe if you read through, I believe it's Grimmismal, wherein Odin is talking about some of the halls and some of the different locations that exist that are presided over by the gods. Thors Hall, to me, the way I look at it is that if you're a person who is particularly drawn to honor Thor, and he may be what you might call your patron deity, somebody who, out of all the other gods, he is the one who you worship the most, or he's the one that you connect with the most in some way, that a lot of his followers could and would be allowed entry to his hall after death. But again, these are some not too greatly discussed points in the text that we have. They're basically mentioned that they are there or that they exist, but in terms of too many great details about it, we don't have a whole lot to go off of. And then, of course, we have, like I mentioned earlier, Helheim, the land of the dead. That is actually spoken of in some of the myths and lore, that it's basically for those who die of sickness or illness, old age. Those who weren't the ones who died in battle to go to either Folkvagn or Valhalla. And this is a place of rest. This is a place that's described in some of the texts as being somewhat kind of dreary, but not very unpleasant, in terms of what some folks can get Helheim confused with sometimes is the Christian place of torment, right? Hellfire, right? It's not that. This is, to me, the way I see Helheim, and again, this is just my own personal view on it from some of what I've read. Helheim is a place that the dead who died of sickness, old age, untimely death, whatever, they go there to rest and meet with their ancestors. And I view Helheim as a place very similar to what we may have here on Earth, on Midgard, where we currently reside. It's a place that's not all that bad. You get to relax and basically have an easy time of just chilling out with your ancestors and with those that, your loved ones that went on before you. Now, within Helheim, at least in some of the texts, we hear about a place that exists for some specifically like terrible types of people. And that place is called Nostrum. It's a pretty tormentuous sort of place. It's said to face north. Poison drips from the ceilings, and the floors are writhing with snakes and serpents and things like that. This area of Helheim, outside of the area where the peaceful dead can rest, is said to be presided over by Nidhogg. This is not really, again, we don't have a whole lot of strong evidence that supports this, but we do see some things, mainly written by Snorri, after the conversion of Scandinavia to Christianity. So it's very, very possible that some of these parts of the afterlife are being pulled, or have Christian influence pulled to it. But this place is said to be set aside to keep the oath breakers, the murderers, kinslayers, even adulterers is something that's mentioned. That this is a place where those people go because they did things that just were in that society and at that time were very bad. They were bad for the tribe. They were bad for the community. And they were things that needed to be sort of met with a certain degree of punishment, if you will. And I'm using that word loosely, punishment, because again, that theory, the idea of a punishment after death or even a reward after death, this isn't something that the old arch-heathens and the Norse at the time had a concept of. This was something that was inserted into society during a conversion to Christianity because of the idea of there being a place of reward for those that do good and a place of torment for those that do wrong or evil or bad things. The heathens before this conversion at the time didn't understand, or didn't have an understanding, or didn't have a thing for that. There was no do good in life and go somewhere, do bad in life and go somewhere else, or receive punishment. We don't really have anything that supports that the Norse understood or believed in anything like that pre-Christian Scandinavia. Okay. So again, when we're talking about now the fact that we have Nostrum and Nidhogg and the poison that drips from the ceilings, and for the oath breakers and the this and the that is largely due to the Christian influence that came, later on after the Viking Age, or during and after the Viking Age. So take that with a grain of salt. I do. It's something that we hear about in some of the texts, especially from like Snorri. There is a lot of Christian influence there, so take that with a grain of salt. But one thing that we do have, and I'm going to leave some information in the description box of this source. It's the Dictionary of Northern Mythology. It was written in 1993 by Rudolf Simek. And what we hear about in this text is, again, this is a newer thing, but it's got historical backing, that there was an idea amongst the Norse of reincarnation, or rebirth, if you will, to the extent that the dead are reborn in one of their descendants or someone who's named after them. To me, this is almost kind of like why we experience what sometimes is referred to as deja vu, an experience that we felt like we've had before, but that we can't really put our finger on, but we feel very closely connected to it. To kind of go a little bit further into that, where this source speaks about the idea of reincarnation or rebirth, through a descendant, some ancestral tie, or someone who's named after them, not necessarily of a family connection. My thought is this, okay? We all have our experiences with our immediate family. We have experiences with people outside of our family. We have ties that we weave with one another in our dealings with each other. Some of us weave very strong webs with one another, okay? We are tied with that weird, whether or not we are family or whether or not we're blood kin, right? This could go for the same from our ancestors and those of our past who have dealt or had dealings with people, and they established a strong connection of sorts through their interactions, okay? So their individual weirds were woven, intertwined together, and then it kind of carries it through into us here now in our present time. So the things that we do now have an effect, in a way, for those ahead of us, or those that were coming after us. Just like the actions of our ancestors before, kind of, their decisions, their actions led up to our existence being here now. So it does make sense that because of that mindset, because of the concept of weird and the orlog that we inherit from those that come from behind us, whether it be, good things, honorable things, or not so good or honorable things, those are things that come down to us through the line, that when those webs are interwoven with one another, that there's a very good, strong possibility that some of this person's orlog and some of this person's luck and some of this person's things transfer over through that line because of that connection. So to me, it's a very possible and very probable even that the idea that we exist further on due to descendants, that there's an ancestor that's living through us now, and that later on there will be our descendants who live on through us, or we live on through them, so on and so forth. All of that. That's a very deep thing, but I definitely feel like it's something that, for the time and for the way that certain things were viewed by the Norse, that it's very possible. So just to kind of, to recap, you guys, one of the things that I've come to understand basically is that, the Norse believed in your value, in your worth in life, and it was what you did while you lived that made you live on in song and in word, and in, they spoke of you, they talked about you, they passed on your legacy to those ahead, and then those that survived. So it was very important. It was very, of paramount focus to live in a way that made your stories worthy to be told. I don't think they really had too much idea of what they're going to do to after they die. When they die, and whatever happens, happens. There wasn't a need at the time for them to be worried about it, because there was no dogma, there was no instructions of you have to do this or else you will suffer that. There wasn't anything like that until the conversion period came through. So I feel like that's another reason why we don't have a lot of great detailed sources that support what exactly is about this place. We have some descriptive, things about some of the halls and what Helheim looks like or feels like, and again, some of the people that end up in certain parts of these halls or some of these other realms, based on actions that may make them worthy or deserving of a certain fate. But again, all of that has a lot to do with, I feel, the Christian influence at the time. So these are my thoughts on the afterlife. I personally am one to feel that when I'm gone, I'll be just in hell with my ancestors, enjoying some well-deserved rest from the life that I lived, and enjoying the time that I have around them that I didn't have while they were alive with me, or that I never got to meet. That is what I hope for. Do I feel like anything that I do now in my current actions or my current deeds is going to guarantee me something special? No. I personally don't. That doesn't mean that you don't have a personal view on things, that you don't have something that that you've been, that you've learned about and that you maybe want to share. So at this point, I definitely invite everybody. Thank you so much for watching all this, by the way, because we did kind of go a little bit longer than I expected, but drop your comments down here in the comments section and let me know what you think about the afterlife in this path, because we all have different parts of this path that we're traveling. Some of us are further along than others. Some of us are on a different, fork in the road than someone else. So we all have different things that we can offer and bring to the table, and I definitely would encourage and be eager to hear about what your take is on this. So anyways, guys, that's been this week's video, and I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up, share it around. Right up here, you're going to see this floating Midgard Musings logo, along with some other related videos here that you can check out. Definitely click on that floating logo, become a subscriber, click the bell notification so that way you're always notified when videos are uploaded. Thank you again so much for your support. Hail, we'll see you next week in the next video.